This week, we see if Quentin Tarantino's latest film is Oscar-worthy or a complete and utter failure. Okay, it probably isn't. So grab a soda, pop some corn, and take a seat, because you're now listening to The Casual Cinema. Welcome back to the show, everyone. Once again, I am one of your hosts, Josh, joined as always by Nathan. And this week, if you couldn't tell by the intro, we are reviewing Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, the 9th film by Quentin Tarantino. Now, as per usual, this is going to be a spoiler review, so if you have not seen the film yet, turn off the podcast, come back later, once you've seen the movie, and then listen to it. Also, some housekeeping before we get started. We are going to be talking most likely about other Tarantino films, so there may be some spoilers here and there, just to keep that in mind. Also, I have not seen Reservoir Dogs. I know, don't have a go at me. So there could be discussions about that as well. But anyway, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Nathan, what is your general thoughts about the movie? What did you like?
Hello, welcome back everyone. Overall, I thought this was a really good movie. I enjoyed it. I can see why people probably didn't enjoy it as much, because not much happens. Like, it's not a linear plot, you could say. It's more just like a character drama, and you're just watching like a bit, like, I don't know, like a long section of these people's lives and how that plays out. But to me, I just found it really interesting. I don't know why. Maybe it's, Tarantino's famous dialogue or whatever, but I had a really good time. This is probably the best I've seen Leonardo DiCaprio in a movie. I thought his performance was just absolutely fantastic, and Brad Pitt matches him as well. I mean, Margaret Robbie was good, but she wasn't in the movie that much, so it doesn't really matter. And yeah, so overall, I liked it, yeah.
Yeah,
what did you think?
I think I'm probably going to echo a lot of that sentiment. I really enjoyed Brad Pitt. Obviously, for me, he was the standout. I really enjoyed DiCaprio, maybe not as much as you by the sounds of things, but that had nothing to do with whether or not his performance was bad. I thought he was excellent in the movie. I thought that, for me, the movie's setting and the overall production design and aesthetic of the film was expertly handled. Everything definitely was reminiscent of the late 60s, early 70s. I think it definitely captured that time period, and I expect no less from Tarantino. I think that overall, if I was comparing this to other films in Tarantino's repertoire or library, I think that, for me, this kind of sits, I would say, in the middle somewhere. I don't think it's his best, but definitely you're getting a Tarantino movie, so no matter what, it's going to be good. That's what I think overall. But I think we'll try and duck dive now a bit more into the specifics, if we will. So without further ado, we'll probably get a look into what it seems to be both of our positives towards the movie, that is performances. So you spoke about DiCaprio and you spoke about Pitt as well. Could you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, I don't know. It's just like some people have told me they prefer Leo's performance. People have told me they prefer Brad Pitt. I mean, just to me personally, Leo really stuck out. I don't know. Every time he was on screen, I was just like, my eyes were glued to the screen. I was just really interested to see what was happening. Especially the part in the movie where he's filming that Western. And, he's like talking to that little girl. And he has the book, and the kind of the events of the book reflect what's happening in his life right now. And he starts tearing up and that. And yeah, and do you know the scene in the trailer as well, where he's like going off at himself? It was fantastic.
Yeah, I think that scene was definitely a standout, and in terms of performance anyway, yeah, I think it really showed DiCaprio's range, and the fact that it was a scene that went on for that long. Like, for our listeners, we're obviously talking about a scene that happens about at the midway through the film, goes for about 5 to 10 minutes, and it's just DiCaprio for the most part, pretty much yelling at himself, saying that if he cannot get this scene done correctly, he will essentially kill himself.
Yeah, he's like talking to himself in the mirror saying he'll kill himself. Yeah, he just, I don't know, he just really like brought the character of Rick Dalton to life. And I thought the concept of the movie was really interesting, that like, you know, Hollywood's a forever changing industry, and like actors have to, you know, keep up with the trends, otherwise they're just forgotten, yeah? So I found that really interesting.
Well, it's definitely a theme you can find in so many films. You know, right now I'm thinking about Singing in the Rain, and the fact that the characters in that movie have to adapt and change to newly found, obviously they were making movies in the silent era, and then they have to adapt to sound and whatnot. And I think that this movie obviously is dealing with a different time period and different subject matter, but definitely you're seeing DiCaprio go through a shift. And I think it's excellent and so much fun to see him do that. I can't really speak to the portrayals of certain historical figures. I mean, it was interesting to find a director like Roman Polanski being portrayed in the movie. Obviously, Sharon Tate, as portrayed by Margot Robbie, is in the film. A big controversy going around at the moment is, of course, that of Bruce Lee, whether or not his portrayal was accurate or not. And there's a few other famous figures, such as Steve McQueen, and even a scene where Rick Dalton, DiCaprio's character, is seen in The Great Escape, and they've used CGI to place him into that movie because
that was well done.
Because it's kind of rumored that he was meant to be playing the lead of that film before McQueen basically took over the role. So I think that was really funny. But as I said earlier, for me, and as you've also said, there's that kind of battle between, is DiCaprio better, is Pitt better, and I ended up siding on Pitt. And I think a lot of that had to do with the character.
Hang on. I don't think it's a battle. I think they worked really well on screen together. Do you know what I mean? They did a really good job, and they really bounced off each other quite well.
Oh, yeah, I think that if we're talking about the first act of the movie and the chemistry between the two characters, then I definitely agree with you. I think that's the case. What I was kind of hinting at was the second act, when you have these characters in different places and different settings, and you're following... I think his name's Cliff Booth.
Yes,
Brad
Cliff.
Okay.
Yeah, I think he definitely probably had the more, like, interesting, like, scene when he goes to the
ranch.
To the ranch.
Yeah,
that's a pretty spooky scene. Yeah,
that's what I was getting at. There's much more tension in Cliff Booth's character and his machinations and what's happening with him as compared to Rick Dalton. But I think that's got more to do with the fact that they're different genres almost. Like, what's happening with DiCaprio feels more like a comedy, and what's happening with Pitt feels more like a drama or a thriller even.
Well, that's what Tarantino does. He always puts a lot of subgenres in his movies.
Yeah, so I definitely think that that's probably why there's that difference between the two characters. But yeah, I just kind of want to backtrack because obviously, you know, we've mentioned it more than once, and I think that we've got to talk about it, is that idea of the Bruce Lee sequence and the controversy surrounding the Bruce Lee sequence. For me, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. I'll start off because I don't know a lot about Bruce Lee. I don't even think I've really seen like a movie or a show that is in, to be honest. But like, I get why his family and friends were offended by it. But look, at the end of the day, it's a fictional movie, and to me, I don't think it's a really huge deal.
Yeah, I think that what we're dealing with here is another example of Tarantino creating historical fiction. He's essentially just taking these people, these places, these times that have existed, and he's messing with them. He's playing with them. He's doing what he wants to do so that they service his story and they service his narrative. I think that in the case of Bruce Lee, what you got was a caricature of the man, not necessarily a pure 100% accurate depiction of that person. And I think that if you can take that with a grain of salt, and if you understand Tarantino's prior work, then you might not necessarily be so offended. But again, we can't speak for the family and friends of Bruce Lee. We can't speak for his daughter, who was the one that spoke out about it. But at least from my perspective, I didn't have an issue with it because the scene itself is funny, and it's kind of poking fun at the idea of Bruce Lee, not necessarily the man. That's how I perceived it, anyway.
Yeah, like, the whole thing is that people are upset that he was portrayed as, like, a really, like, arrogant person. And although he was, like, I didn't really think that when I watched it. Like, I was laughing, I'm like, it's a funny scene. Because I didn't know about any of this when I watched the movie. I found out afterwards that people were upset about it. I laughed. I thought it was a funny scene. And afterwards, I wasn't like, oh, man, Bruce Lee is an asshole. Like, I didn't even think about it, do you know what I mean? Because I know I'm just watching a movie.
Yeah, exactly.
Because, like, they're worried that it's, like, going to ruin people's perception of Bruce Lee. It didn't really do that to me, so I don't know.
Yeah, it's just a fictional interpretation of a character. And as I said, you just got to step back a little bit and remember that. And I think that if you can do that, then obviously you can spend more time enjoying it than necessarily criticizing it. But I think that if we're talking about performances themselves, they're all great. But if we can get into Margot Robbie's character and obviously Sharon Tate and the use of the Manson murders and of the man himself, that is Charles Manson, it's a kind of tricky area. On the one hand, I can see where Tarantino was going with it. He was trying to do what he did with Hitler in Inglourious Basterds. Not to the same extent, obviously. But I think what we have here is not necessarily a misuse of history, but definitely an underutilization of it. I think that Margot Robbie's character definitely did not need to be in the movie. But then again, Tarantino has prided himself on including conversations about nothing. And frankly, if you're familiar with his work, you'll know that many of his movies depict this. And I think that this was just another example of him trying to world build rather than say, hey, this person's an integral part of this story. Do you know what I mean? But I don't know. What are your thoughts on it? Because my thinking is that I didn't necessarily love the scenes with her. Again, that's not a slight against her performance. It's more just the fact that I didn't necessarily see the need for it.
Yeah, although it didn't bother me, I suppose, but I think the whole Manson family and Sharon Tate, it's definitely underused because it's a long movie. It's like 2 hours and 40 minutes, and there's like 5 scenes with her, I think, and then you just have the big thing with you have the ranch, and then you just have them at the end in the house with the Manson family, and it's kind of weird because there's not a build up like throughout the film towards that ending. It just happens.
Yes, it's very random. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love that. Like, I love that. I love that. That's how the movie ends. But yeah, go on.
It's just like something that happens. It's not like a payoff. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yes.
There's no. Yeah. It's not like. I don't know. It's then the characters like barely even interacted with like the Manson Sharon Tate or even the Manson family because you think like Inglourious Basterds, obviously they're all like people that have been they're going there to kill Hitler and end the war. They're all people that are affected by the war. Do you know what I mean? And they all have a reason to do that. It's not like they don't know who Hitler is, and then he suddenly just shows up in the house and they kill him.
Yeah, he has a role. Him and the Nazi Party have a role in that film, and they're built up in such a way that it culminates in the third act with obviously the destruction of the theater.
I think more specifically the Jewish girl who escapes, and it's like
at the beginning, yeah,
and it's like her revenge story, even though it doesn't play out how you want it to. But you know what I mean? You have that motive from the get go. There's no motive here. They just kind of like, oh, let's attack these guys instead of going to Sharon Tate's house. And then it just kind of backfires on them. And then, and it's just this section at the end. And then, Cliff goes, oh, I know you guys. I remember you from the ranch. But it's not like he had a reason to really hate them apart from, stabbing his tire. But
yeah, I think that the ranch sequence that we're speaking of, we can't go to exact detail because neither of us probably know a huge amount about Manson and history in that particular era. So I think that
what then I know a little bit.
I know. Well, what I mean is that I know that Charles Manson had essentially this cult-esque kind of following at the time, and that a lot of people were staying or believing in his truths or his supposed truths. I won't say truths, and that he, as I said, had this following and he had a group, and that in this case he had connections with people in Hollywood, or not necessarily of people of high stature, but definitely had some sort of connection. In this case, when watching the movie, we know that he sent some of his followers to Sharon Tate's house.
Yeah, see, I do know a little bit. He didn't do any killing himself.
Yeah,
he always
I know that.
Yeah, cult members. And it's all true about the ranch and everything, and how that the old man who lets him stay there. That's all true. That actually happened, and he actually slept with like a lot of the members and stuff. It's pretty accurate.
Yeah, so I didn't have an issue with that stuff. Like, that's not, my criticism isn't that. Like, again, I'm saying I loved everything that happened at the ranch, and I loved all those scenes. But I agree with you that I think that towards the end, its inclusion, especially with everything that's happening with Rick Dalton, it just kind of, I guess the best way to say it is it doesn't make sense. You know what I mean?
Well, that's the thing. It's meant to be this twist, like, what if these two characters lived next door to Sharon Tate?
Yeah, exactly.
Because Leo has that interaction with them, they decide to go and kill him instead of Sharon Tate. And obviously, because, Cliff's like a badass stuntman, and, he can, fight, which I think was the point of the Bruce Lee scene, was to, like, set him up that he could, like, defeat anyone in a fight kind of thing. And that's it, right? He just, like, slaughters them all.
Yeah, and obviously the flamethrower sequence.
Which was hinted at really early on, and kind of knew that he was going to get the flamethrower out of the shed later. So.
Yeah, so...
Yeah, I don't know. There's no build up. I feel like they should have had a lot more interaction with the Manson family in it.
At least Sharon Tate. I think there should have been more. There should have been more interaction there. Like,
so they had a reason to even defend. Maybe it was like even like they'll go and defend her instead. Just like accidentally kind of getting in a fight with them.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Yeah, but overall, I thought the plot and the story itself was still funny and intriguing and everything that you wanted from a Tarantino movie, and its representation of the times, as I've said earlier, was fantastic, and the production design in general, I was so blown away by. I was just like, it was just so impressive.
Yeah, as a period piece of the 60s, it's fantastic. It's very well done. Yeah, I mean, everything, the cars, the music, it's great. It really immerses you.
Yeah, so I guess besides the negatives that we've already said, I guess even if they can be classified as negatives, I don't really have anything else bad to say about the movie itself.
No, I was never bored. I was intrigued to see what happened. I just think it almost felt like the end was a bit slapped on, almost like it wanted to be two movies in one, but you couldn't like squish it all together. maybe it was just, I don't know, he's too obsessed with just showing random scenes of dialogue and acting. I don't know.
Okay, well, maybe there are more negatives than I give credit for, because now that you've said that, it made me think about not only the ending, which we've talked about ad nauseum, but also the middle act, the second act in general. There were times besides the aforementioned ranch where I think it got slow. As we've talked about, we're going to keep saying it, the stuff with Sharon Tate felt a little slow. As much as I loved the Rick Dalton scenes, they too felt, in my opinion, a little self-indulgent. To the point where I was like, okay, is this just Tarantino expressing his love for this time period, which it probably is, but it's dragging on a little bit too much for my liking, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, that's fair enough, and a lot of people have been saying that too. I think that in the middle it drags a bit. But speaking of what Tarantino is expressing his love for, it definitely expresses his love of feet in this movie.
Oh dear God.
What's with that? He's always shoving feet in the camera. It's a little trademark of his, isn't it?
I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, there's feet on dashboards. There's feet. It does seem a little weird, yeah.
Yeah, in Death Proof, there's a lot of feet as well.
And of course, Kill Bill has the wiggle your big toe, or was it wiggle your little toe? I can't remember. Just the wiggle her toe scenes. But yeah, that close-up on the bride's feet. And in this case, there's a teenage girl with her feet on the dashboard. And then you basically see Brad Pitt's feet. It's everybody's feet.
And Margot Robbie just decides she's going to take her shoes off in the movie theatre. Fair enough, put her feet up. Why not?
It does get a bit crazy.
Yeah. And a hairy armpit as well. I don't know.
They're hippies, man. They're hippies. What do you expect? It's the culture. It's the time.
I know. I'm sorry. I went off the rails.
You went off a tangent about feet.
I thought it was worth a mention. The guy loves feet. It was in the movie. I'm just pointing it out.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Nah, look. Yeah. Well, I really want to watch it again. Not in theaters. I'll probably wait for the home release.
Yeah, I will say it definitely deserves a second viewing. But yeah, go on.
Yeah, just to see how slow I find it a second time, I think will be interesting. Because I'm kind of like, when you watch a Tarantino film these days, you're kind of like on the edge of your seat. You're waiting to see what happens, and that's exciting. And now that you know, maybe it won't be as satisfying this time.
Yeah,
or second time around, I should say.
No, well, I think that we've pretty much said as much as we can say, and if that's the case, we might actually be able to do a ranking, or at least a placing of this film amongst other Tarantino movies after we've given it a verdict. I don't know if you have any idea where you'd put it. I have some sort of idea, but I mean, I can go to my verdict first if you'd like, and then that might give you some time to give it some thought.
Yeah, go for it.
So overall, obviously this movie is a Tarantino movie, so it's going to be great no matter what. And I don't say that as a fanboy, I just say it as there's a certain standard we've come to expect from Tarantino, and as a result, this movie is quite good. And as I've said, it's great, and there's no doubt about that. So the real verdict for me is that how does the film compare to his other movies? And for me, it's somewhere in the middle. I guess this is part of the comparison I guess we want to talk about, but for me, it's somewhere between, like, I don't know, Hateful Eight and I guess Jackie Brown and Death Proof. I think it is better than the latter. So for me, I really enjoyed the movie for its performances, as I've said, for its production design, and I expect no less from Tarantino, for the director he is. I wished they had used Sharon Tate to a better degree, and I think that the use of the Manson murders could have been just a little bit better and more integral to the plot. But all in all, for me, the movie definitely deserves a 4 out of 5. Anyway, what is your verdict for the film?
Yeah, there's definitely, especially after talking about it more, we can definitely see there's a lack of focus in the film as to it's almost like the movie itself doesn't really know what it wants to be about at times. Yeah, but like you said, it's Tarantino. You got great dialogue, you got great performances, and it's an enjoyable film. Yeah, I'm actually gonna agree with you, and I'm gonna give it a 4 out of 5 as well. Um, in terms of ranking in Tarantino films, it's funny because you said you put it, between those movies, but I don't know what your your list is, or like what your opinion of all these films are.
Oh no, sorry.
I also, because I actually really enjoy Death Proof. I know you don't really like it, and I also don't really like Jackie Brown, but a lot of people do like Jackie Brown, and it's actually considered one of his best movies. So without context, it might be confusing what you meant by that.
Okay, sorry. So what I kind of meant by that is, in my personal opinion, I think Jackie Brown is a little bit too slow for my liking. And from what I remember, the movie's like 3 hours long. Is that right? Like, I remember Jackie Brown being quite a long film, and a slow film at that.
I think it's about the same. Yeah, about 240. Yeah, 2040. It's just a really slow paced movie.
Yeah.
I actually I rewatched it recently. I enjoyed it a bit more than the first time I watched it, but I would still rank it near the bottom. Just, I don't know. To me, the dialogue's not as good, and just, I don't know. It's just a really slow movie.
And my opinion of Death Proof has more to do with the fact that it was part of the Grindhouse showing, and as a result, there were 2 films, or there was another movie that was supposed to be accompanied with Death Proof, and that was Planet Terror by Robert Rodriguez.
You don't count that.
I don't count that. No. But what I mean is the fact that I experienced both of those movies at once. I watched Death Proof first, and then I watched Planet Terror, and I enjoyed Planet Terror more just because it was more silly and over the top and crazy than what Death Proof was, which I felt was a little bit slower. And I think I liked Death Proof when it came to the girls. I think they didn't. I can't. Again, you're going to have to help me here. When they dealt with, I guess is the best way I can say it, Kurt Russell. They dealt with Kurt Russell, and they had that whole chase sort of sequence. That I enjoyed more, but everything before that was just kind of like, for me anyway, to my knowledge, meh.
It's actually kind of similar to Hateful Eight in the sense that the movie's kind of split in 2 halves. So the first half is kind of like you have this group of girls that are victims, and Kurt Russell hunts them down and kills them. Spoilers. And then the second half of the movie is he hunts like a different group in like a different state. But this time, he messes with the wrong people and they go after him instead. And I really enjoyed that part. I thought that was really cool. It's a long movie. It's a bit of a grind, but I thought the payoff was really good. And what I mean by it's like Hateful Eight, you have the first half in the stagecoaches and then like half in the
cabin
saloon, the tavern,
You know what I
mean? Like it's like a movie split in half, basically. 2 different stories almost.
Yeah, so what I meant by that is I felt that it was better than Jackie Brown and Death Proof, but I didn't think it was better than The Hateful Eight, which I enjoyed more for its, I guess, the overall performances and the use of everybody, because I felt like the plot of Hateful Eight was connected. Everything was connected in such a way that everybody had a role to play in that film, where I feel like in this movie, everything with Sharon Tate just kind of feels a bit superfluous.
Yeah. Okay.
Does that make any sense? That's kind of what I'm getting at.
For sure. Yeah. Okay. Well, for me, I still don't really know where I'll put it. And it's hard for me because I really enjoy all of Tarantino's films except for Jackie Brown, really, in my own opinion. So it's hard for me to say, but since I've been rewatching the films, Inglourious Bastards has really stood out to me and might actually be my favorite, which is weird because the first time I watched it, I thought it was really boring. But now, I fell in love with that movie when I rewatched it. I know we're just talking about Tarantino films now, but I'm sure that's okay.
Yes.
It's hard for me to put it. Because then I'd also put Pulp Fiction pretty high as well. That's also a great movie. Yeah, but I think I'd put it in the middle or towards the like upper half, like and his better side, like one of his better films, I would say.
It is hard. I mean, how are you supposed to place one of his
They're
movies
all so
against another one of
different.
his movies? It's like it's
They're
sort of
so different.
it's like a Sophie's Choice almost. Like you've got, how am I supposed to compare this movie to Kill Bill? How am I supposed to compare this movie to Django Unchained? How am I supposed to compare it to Hateful Eight, and so on and so forth? It's like, it's just not fair.
And I feel like Tarantino, he purposely makes all his movies so different. I don't think you're meant to compare them. It's they each have something else. Like they each have something else to show you, something different, and that's what I like. He has a similar style, but you never know what you're gonna get. And all his movies don't have to be the same. It's good to have something different, and that's why I guess I'm kind of defending it against the haters. Yeah.
Well, look, it's fair, and I think that it's great that Tarantino is still not only making movies, but making the movies that he wants to make, free from the confines of what society or politics might tell him. You know what I mean? I think that he should do whatever he wants to do, and that he should be recognized for the quality of it, not for the, messages that it might convey, if that makes any sense. You know what I mean? But on that note, I think we might leave it there for this week. So it's been great chatting with you. It's great to get back into it and talk about a movie again. And hopefully you'll hear from us soon. All right.
Yeah, hopefully that wasn't too messy and we weren't too sloppy, like always when we come back from a while.
No, it was probably sloppy and messy, but that's okay. Anyway, guys.
All
right, we'll catch us later.
See ya.